On June 5, the New York City Rent Guidelines Board voted to freeze rents for about 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. This was a major political victory for Mayor Zohran Mamdani. It also fulfilled one of his central campaign promises after entering City Hall. But is this really a good way to solve the housing problem? What happens in the long run when the government freezes rents? In Gregory Mankiw's famous economics textbook, Principles of Economics, there is a classic case study about rent control. It appears in the microeconomics section on supply, demand, and government policy. This is one of the most classic examples of a price ceiling. It is also one of the areas where economists have a very strong consensus. A rent freeze is a typical price ceiling. The government sets the maximum rent that landlords are allowed to charge. The goal usually sounds good. It is meant to help low-income people afford housing. But Mankiw's core argument is this: rent control is an extremely inefficient way to help the poor. The long-term costs are much greater than the short-term benefits. In the short run, a rent freeze can help some people. That is because both housing supply and housing demand are hard to change quickly. The number of rental apartments in a city is basically fixed in the short run. Landlords cannot immediately build new housing. They also cannot easily sell the property or convert it to owner-occupied housing in a very short period of time. Tenants also face costs when they move. Moving takes time. It costs money. People cannot instantly change their housing plans. Lower rents also do not immediately bring a huge number of new renters into the market. So in the short run, the result looks simple. The government forces rents down. The market only sees a small housing shortage. Most tenants get cheaper housing. The policy looks successful. But in the long run, the problems begin to explode. When you suppress prices, you also suppress supply for existing landlords. A rent ceiling directly reduces the return on rental housing. Landlords will stop maintaining apartments. They will stop renovating them. They will stop upgrading facilities. Some landlords may leave the rental market entirely. They may sell the apartment. They may turn it into owner-occupied housing. They may convert it into short-term rentals or commercial use. As a result, the rental housing stock keeps shrinking. Developers build housing because housing can make money. If developers see that future rental income will be frozen by policy, they will not see enough profit. So they will stop investing in new housing. New housing supply will stagnate. It may even go backward. At the same time, low rents will attract more people into the city. More young people may choose to live alone instead of sharing apartments. So rental demand will rise. If a rent freeze becomes permanent, the final result is predictable. Supply shrinks sharply. Demand keeps expanding. The market develops a serious and permanent housing shortage. There are far more people looking for apartments than available apartments. At that point, the market is completely controlled by landlords. Mankiw cites a famous line from economists: rent control is the best way to destroy a city, other than bombing. At this point, you may want to push back. Rents in New York were already extremely high. Building housing should have been very profitable. So why didn't high prices lead to a huge increase in housing supply? Under normal supply and demand logic, developers should build a lot of housing when rents are high. More housing should then bring rents down in the long run. But that did not happen. The reason is that many existing homeowners do not want new housing built near them. They fear that too much new housing will lower the value of their own homes. They also worry that their neighborhoods and schools will become more crowded. These homeowners and long-term residents elect community boards and local politicians who represent their interests. Those community boards and local politicians then block developers from building new housing. That is one reason why rents in New York keep rising. Every borough in New York has community boards. These boards represent the interests of existing homeowners and long-term residents. Homeowners organize and attend community board meetings. They argue that new housing will cause traffic congestion. They argue that schools will become overcrowded. They use these arguments to oppose more housing. In theory, community board opinions are only advisory, but in politics, They carry real weight. City council members, the City Planning Commission, and the City Council all have to worry about these voters. If a project requires a zoning change, it usually has to go to the City Council. City Council members need votes from existing homeowners and long-term residents, so they often defend those voters' interests. That means they often block new housing. New York's 2024 citywide housing reform is a good example. The reform was called City of Yes for housing opportunity. The idea was simple. Every neighborhood should accept a little more housing. The plan would allow more small apartments. It would allow more housing near train stations. It would reduce parking requirements. But many low-density neighborhoods strongly opposed it. According to Streets Blog's counter votes from 57 community boards, 38 community boards opposed the plan. Only 20 supported it or gave conditional support. Opposition was especially strong in low-density neighborhoods. Developers understand the system. So many projects are abandoned before they are even formally submitted. The NYU Furman Center has pointed out that developers may walk away early if they sense that local elected officials will oppose a project. They may not spend money on feasibility studies. The project dies before it even enters the formal process. Existing homeowners also have many other tools to stop developers from building new housing. One tool is environmental review. In New York, when the city wants to change zoning to allow more housing, it usually has to conduct an environmental review. Environmental review was originally designed to evaluate whether a project would harm the environment, but existing homeowners have turned it into a tool for blocking new housing. The Citizens Budget Commission says environmental review is one of the most time-consuming and expensive parts of New York's land use approval process. New York's land use review process is slow, uncertain, and costly. That reduces the willingness of developers to propose projects. The more important point is even more absurd. CHPC has pointed out a strange pattern. If a zoning change allows more housing, it may require a complex environmental review. The cost can reach millions of dollars. But if a rezoning reduces future housing supply, the process can be much easier and much faster. Ozone Park is an example. The downzoning of Ozone Park took only a little more than 3 months from start to finish. The City Council review and approval took only 8 days. This is absurd. If you want to build more housing, you have to prove that you are not causing harm. But if you reduce housing supply, you do not have to prove that this will worsen the housing shortage. Environmental review is not the only tool. Resident groups can also sue. They can claim that the government violated procedure. They can claim that there was not enough public participation. They can claim that the city failed to properly study the impact on infrastructure. Gowanus is a typical example. This area of Brooklyn used to have many sites restricted to industrial use. Later, New York wanted to rezone the area for mixed use. That would allow a large amount of new housing to be built. Opponents sued. In 2021, the lawsuit temporarily paused the land use review process for the Gowanus rezoning. Later, related groups filed another lawsuit. They claimed that the city had not properly complied with environmental law. The rezoning was expected to create more than 500 apartments. About 30 of those apartments would be for low and middle-income households. The court later rejected the environmental review lawsuit. It ruled that New York City's environmental review was not arbitrary, abusive, or illegal. But even when opponents lose in court, they may still achieve their goal. Because for developers, time is money. Financing costs can change, interest rates can change, construction costs can rise, the political environment can change. If a project is delayed for 2 or 3 years, it may no longer make financial sense. So even if the developer wins the lawsuit, the housing project may still die. That is why Mamdani's rent freeze alone is not enough. If he only freezes rents but does not confront the existing homeowners and long-term residents who block housing, then he is only treating the symptoms. He is not solving the real problem. If he wants to solve New York's housing crisis, he has to increase housing supply. He has to challenge the wealthy neighborhoods, the community boards, and the local politicians who block new housing. Only then can he say he is truly trying to solve the housing crisis.